Yeah, hey, new guys, listen up. Just so you know, voluntary means mandatory, okay? Everybody's got to be there. If you're not there, then you probably don't care about beating Arizona, and if you're not serious about that, then you might as well go home.
Oh, yeah, we're taking it this year, fellas. All the way.
Hi, folks, I'm Ignatiy Vishnevetsky.
And I'm Alex Dowd.
We're here this week at Farmhouse Tavern, just around the corner from the AV Club office.
Welcome to Film Club.
There's a scene in the new Richard Linklater movie, Everybody Wants Some, where this character is played by Wyatt Russell. He says, finding tangents within the framework, therein lies the artistry. That's a summary of Linklater's style right there, because this is a movie that's basically about horny baseball players, and it is all about these little tangents.
He's called this a spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused. Dazed and Confused set towards the end of the 70s. This is a film set at the beginning of the 80s. There's a sense that it's sort of picking up where that film left off, and this sort of general party vibe, where we have this sort of sprawling ensemble of characters. But I think he's doing something kind of sly in this one. When you first are introduced to this group of college baseball players, and our main character, Jake, shows up and meets them.
He's a freshman, he's a pitcher.
Right. The film sort of introduces him coming in and meeting the boys in what is essentially a glorified frat house. And I would say the first 15 or 20 minutes or so of this movie really push how much broiness you can handle.
How much boorish behavior you can accept from a film that's still very sympathetic toward the characters.
Right.
On the one hand, it is looking at this period through a lens of nostalgia.
Absolutely.
I mean, Linklater's own youth, he's a Texan, he played baseball, so there's a very strong nostalgic element here. On the other hand, it's not sanding down the rough edges of this time.
But I think what's important, though, is that we're sort of introduced to these guys, and they're not especially likable. But then over the course of the film, as the days go by, we slowly come around, if not to their philosophies about the world, at least to what somebody might find likable about these guys.
I do feel like as much as Linklater clearly has a lot of sympathy and a lot of interest in what different kinds of characters might have to say, these movies do sometimes have these complete caricature.
I think a lot of these guys start to get shades of personality, and he starts giving them philosophies. And I think that's all about the way that Linklater looks at the world, which is that everybody sort of reveals these hidden depths the more time you spend with them. You look at the filmmaking in something like this, and then you look at the filmmaking in Dazed and Confused, and I generally prefer the latter, but I think that you can definitely see the way that he's grown as a director. I would say that his control of the camera, there is a real casual mastery to the way that he will shoot a space and the way that he'll capture a conversation even.
This is a film that's very, very well acted. I mean, he has a very good eye for talent. This is a largely unknown cast, but they all do very good work.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately this movie is a lot of fun, and it really does feel like being at this 4-day party with these guys. And as you sort of gradually sink into the spirit of this baseball team.
Yeah, I mean, with Linklater, you know, you sort of want to talk about character belief systems and relationships and these very fluidly handled scenes, but the truth is this is a comedy, and it is pretty funny.
There's something else smaller that hit theaters today that I think is really worth checking out.
Which is Louder Than Bombs, which is Joachim Trier, Norwegian filmmaker. This is his English language debut. Quite seamless, actually.
Yeah, you'd never guess that it's by a filmmaker who English isn't their first language, you know?
And he's not exactly taking it easy for an English language American debut here. I mean, this is basically a domestic drama, and it revolves around the suicide of the mother, which happened sometime before the movie starts. And it's about the effect that this woman's death has basically had on the men in her life.
And we're sort of looking at how these 3 different men or boys have coped with her death.
And it's slipping in and out of different modes, different styles.
Yeah, I mean, this is
in
a
and out
film
of perspectives. There are jumps in time.
Yeah, this is a film that is constantly flashing back, that's constantly jumping into dreams and fantasies. The youngest son writes this long poem, and we sort of see that visualized. And I think that's something really interesting about Trier's work, is that his characters are always caught in every time but their own. There's almost never a complete present tense in his films, because his characters are always nostalgic for something that happened in the past or hopeful about something that happened in the future. And Trier is always taking us into those different timelines.
There's something very novelistic about the way he structures it.
Absolutely.
Because he's going to all these perspectives. It's all about internalized emotions and basically extrapolating on it. But his techniques are completely cinematic.
The members of this family are trying to understand each other, but you can't really share the perspective of someone else. And a lot of it is that they're all just on these different trajectories. There's no big dramatic...
There's no cathartic moment. There's no moment where these men suddenly go, oh, we fixed our broken family.
The best that you can maybe maybe hope for is that at some point these three men will find some kind of mutual understanding, at least in each other and in what they're going through here.
But it is dealing with unresolved emotions, and it is about how these emotions don't get resolved, and it doesn't attempt to resolve them, and that I think makes it seem a lot more authentic.
But I think even people who find this particular material difficult to relate to will be intoxicated by the style. He'll have flashbacks where characters are narrating their own experiences to no one, really. It's not a piece of writing, it's just them talking in second person about some memory.
Well, yeah, and he employs multiple narrators. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, and yet it's not, I wouldn't describe it as frenetic. You know, there's no, it doesn't feel like it's overworking this.
No.
Rather,
I think
these are
feels,
the best kind of ways to try to explore these complex emotional reactions and family dynamics. So these are films that are very, you could say, generous toward their characters. We should talk about a movie that's opening next week that is extremely merciless toward its characters, which is Green Room.
Yeah, Green Room. It's the new feature from Jeremy Saulnier, who made Blue Ruin. Blue Ruin is this sort of revenge noir, but seen through the lens of a character who has no idea what he's doing. And this is very similar in the sense that it sort of presents this John Carpenter-like pressure cooker scenario where you have a group of people trapped in a sort of interior space, but they're sort of in way over their head too.
So you've got this punk band. They have a last-minute venue change. They end up at this roadhouse that turns out to be full of white supremacists.
Yeah, it's like a skinhead joint.
Yeah, it's a skinhead joint in the middle of nowhere, and they accidentally witness a murder, then lock themselves in this room when it becomes obvious that they're not going to leave this place alive.
And it turns into this sort of life and death negotiation. And the bad guys, these sort of neo-Nazi characters, are led by Patrick Stewart. It's not that he's playing against type, it's that they're putting that type into a new context. And he has all that civility that we're used to, but put in this really menacing new context.
It's a very grisly film.
Yes, yes. One of the things I love about this guy's movies is that his films are very exciting and they work as thrillers just in the same way that anything works as a thriller. But the violence in his films is not fun. They basically...
Oh no, it is hideous.
It is hideously violent.
And there's a lot of machete wielding in this film, a lot of machete action. He doesn't subscribe to this kind of rule that you have to keep the characters intact. Once you've sort of established that to the audience early on, you sort of create this atmosphere of unpredictability.
Yes.
Because you know that something bad could potentially happen to anyone, regardless of whether they seem like a major character or not.
And you know, I thought of something like Deliverance, where we're seeing these characters who basically are responding very realistically to the violence that gets inflicted upon them. There's a scene where one of the characters gets sliced with a machete in the arm, and his terror and pain and panic is very real and very big. And I think as much as the violence, as sort of visceral as that is, some of the strongest portions of the film are just when we're watching these skinheads basically put this plot into motion, and you see how meticulous they are.
But at the same time, they're not always successful either. I mean, they screw up all the time.
Right, but there is this sense that there's a certain calm that they have about setting the gears into motion.
And it's not just a question, I think, of having violence and convincing gore. There's a sense of form and there's a control of form here. There's some kind of wonderful, playful moments, some kind of quick associative cuts, especially early in the film when he's trying to establish the plot as quickly as possible. And it's the kind of thing that makes you really excited to see what a filmmaker is going to do next.